Well, but I mean, Nicholas, you'd be up there with the chisel taking it down because, you know, you're a big fan of yanking all of these things down.
Well, I mean, look, Mark's point is very eloquent and amusing, but as is often the case, he's wrong, okay? Like, yes, this lady makes
Henry
a silly
Lawson does
point.
say he did discover
Henry
the
Lawson,
Blue
yeah,
Mountains.
no, so I'm with you on let's not pull down a statue of the great bard Henry Lawson, okay? But it is the fact that white males, like you, Mark, are massively overrepresented in statues and memorials in Australia. So just to give you Melbourne as an example, there's about 600 statues and memorials in Melbourne. Of those 600, about 590 of them commemorate the life and achievements of white males. Now, that's leaving out a very, very substantial part of the population who have made a very substantial contribution. So I'm with you on that, Paul. Like, I'm not here saying let's go and pull down statues, let's vandalise them, because that's vandalism. But I do think there's a strong case to be made about not just trying to airbrush 50+% of our population out of the stories we tell about our history, but actually trying to elevate them and put them alongside these other great figures so that we can have a more balanced view of our history. Well, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, Nicholas, this is the anti-intellectualism of the left, that you want to judge people by their skin colour and their gender. Instead of judging people by the things that matter, their work ethic, their commitment to community, their commitment to looking after other people. This is such a primitive doctrine to associate me. It's got nothing to do with the people. Nothing to do with the people. You've got statues in Melbourne. And to say somehow this is some form of white privilege. Mate, I grew up in a public housing estate. We didn't own a house. We didn't own a car. And every bloody thing I've done in life, I worked my guts out for it. And whether I've got any success or failure in life is immaterial to my skin colour and immaterial to my gender, and nobody in Green Valley housing estate said, mate, here's your ticket of white privilege in life. In fact, I had plenty of friends who couldn't get a bloody job in the centre of Sydney because they grew up in a place like Green Valley. And the fact that you peddle this absolute BS, so primitive, so anti-intellectual, so driven by what people look like, you know, this is what people talked about 500 years ago, not the Enlightenment, what they look like, is such a disgrace to the things you'd otherwise articulate about social justice. And banging on about statues in Melbourne again is so disrespectful, disgustingly disrespectful to Indigenous people who've got real problems and would look to galahs like you to think maybe every now and then you'd come up with a real solution instead of the trivia, the fluff and the absurdity of picking on statues because someone had a certain skin colour.
Rita, I promise you're getting in here, but
I'm sorry. I mean, Mark, I'm not going to sit here tonight and try and compare who's got the best log hut story about a life story. But, you know, I'm an immigrant boy who's made work pretty hard my whole life as well.
You brought me into it, comparing me to the statues.
But
you introduced me. You introduced me to the debate.
Correct.
But, Mark, you and I could walk around Melbourne and I promise you, I could point to statues of some old, you know, Tory tosspot, and you'd say, why the hell was there a statue built for that guy?
Sure, but
when there's not statues of people like William Barak, for example, who was the great Indigenous leader, who actually was a translator between European settlers in Melbourne and the Indigenous people, and brought so much peace to because of the great work he did working between two cultures. Why is there not a statue to a guy like that?
Well, why? Because statues don't solve community violence. Statues don't solve unemployment. Statues don't solve welfare dependency. Statues don't solve drug and alcohol addiction. And if you're so foolish, so primitive, so basic, you think that's the main game, you're a disgrace.